I think for those of you who don't know, we should identify the speaker, who's Professor Martin Sherman, one of the preeminent professors and writers in Israel. And I think your question was, do I agree? And so my answer is yes.
Can I take a crack at disagreeing? So let me take the part that I disagree with. First of all, I don't think it's correct to say that that is the swamp. There's this common disease. It's on the left and the right to see this is primarily an Israeli problem. If Israel does this or that, the problem will go away. The diplomatic war against Israel is not waiting for Israel's approval. And it's not going to end no matter what Israel does. There's a question of what is the best strategy to respond to it. But under no circumstances should we fool ourselves into thinking that it is relying upon Israel doing this or that. Now, there's a question of what is the best response to the diplomatic war. And so I think that it's a fair statement to say that retreat or constant retreat is not a very good strategy. That said, you also have to pick your battles about where it is that you want to confront and move forward, and which are the battles that are best not handled. Particularly if you're talking about diplomatic wars and public relations wars. Public relations wars, in part, are not about how you fight them. They're about what are the issues you choose to fight. What are the issues you want to put on the table, and which are the issues that you'd rather not address at all. In general, I agree with you that retreat is not a very good strategy. I'm not sure that the particulars are the best strategy for fighting the PR war.
You touched on one very important aspect, which is the PR war, precisely. Tonight I talked to you about humanitarian law. That's because it's something that I know about. It's a part of my past, but it's not my main occupation. What I do on a daily basis is to give workshops and seminars to educate people who don't know the facts of the Middle East conflict. And it really starts there. Each and every one of us, and in particular in the Jewish communities of this nation, we need to know all the facts. You know, I mean, all of you, I'm ready to bet, have been engaged in intense debates with family, friends, relatives, colleagues, what have you, over Israel. And there are huge arguments. What I'm finding is that a lot of people are finding themselves tongue-tied because here they receive at least accusations, genocide, and you name it, apartheid, and they know that it's baloney, but they don't really know how to answer to that. So I think it really starts there. All of us, each and every one of us, we have to do our homework, we have to learn the facts, we have to learn how to respond to these accusations. And there's another aspect to that, which you also touched on, which is, I get people, when I give my lectures and classes, I mean, it never fails. Every single time there's at least one person that says, oh, but Israel is not doing enough in the world of PR. They're not giving enough money, it's not their priority. And my answer has been for years, stop blaming Israel. It's not going to happen. They have their own problem. What we need to do is take care of our own PR battle where we are here. And Doris is doing a fabulous job here in LA in this respect. It's a very good illustration. And I think I would really encourage each and every one of you to pick up that battle. Each and every one of you can become a real active Israel advocate. If all of us did that, we could really make a big difference.
Mr. Surbeck partially answered the first two of my questions in his response just now, but the first question was, I appreciate him addressing Tibet in regards to double standards, but I'm very uncomfortable in even mentioning Tibet in regards to Israel, or for that matter, South Africa, and and apartheid because of how frequently you confront it in the media. And I've worked with kids before in radio, and that's a question and an assumption that they make a lot is zero difference between Israel and apartheid South Africa, or Tibet, because it's easy to grasp. If possible, I was wondering if any one or two or all three of you could give your elevator pitch, if you will, of why you cannot equate Israel to China or South Africa. My second question, which I guess is unrelated, is we seem to be operating, our rationale seems to be operating under the assumption that the Palestinian leadership, Hamas and Fatah, want a state. Is that an assumption, a fact, or false?
Okay, so I'll take my crack first, and I presume that my colleagues will join me. So let me start with the second one first. There's this assumption that they want to stay. I don't actually assume that. I don't believe that there's any indication that the Palestinians, either Fatah or Hamas, actually are interested in a state. I think that it's a diplomatic gambit as part of a larger campaign. There is a stake in hand to be had. It would be a very interesting thing if they took Gaza, which has a Palestinian government, has territory, has the capacity to carry on foreign relations, has a permanent population, and treated it as a state, which the rest of the world would obviously go along with. But there is no interest in doing so. The interest is in declaring the West Bank, which is not one, to be a state, because that is more interesting and useful in diplomatic confrontation. So I don't see any indication that, in fact, either of these parties is particularly interested in the Palestinian state. So it's not an assumption of mine. The first question was, what's the elevator pitch for why Israel is different? Well, there are a million reasons why Israel is different, and I think that's the wrong thing to ask yourself. Because your elevator pitch is never going to be, let me explain to you why I'm not a child molester. Right? If the moment that that's my elevator pitch, I'm in the wrong business. Right? So the whole point of all these accusations, Israel's apartheid, Israel is China, Israel is like China and Tibet, is to make that the issue. It's to have Israel to, well, we're not a part of it. Well, of course Israel's not a part of it. What are we even discussing this for? This is not something that should be addressed. This is not something that Israel should expend efforts in pitching to the world. Israel is not an apartheid state. What Israel should be doing is, besides pitching its accomplishments, is running negative on the people who made these outrageous claims. Right? They're the people that you want to talk about. That's the issue that you want to pitch. What you want to pitch is why they're libelous, not why I'm okay.
I completely share Avi's, what can I call it, maybe more aggressive attitude. I think too often you have people who are really kind of cowed by the pro-Palestinians, who are themselves very aggressive. Well, we need to stand our ground and be just as aggressive, but we have to know what we're talking about in order to do that. So that is really where it starts. Knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. You have to start there. Once you know your facts, then it becomes a real fun game. I can tell you that. Give you one quick example. Well, let me address very quickly the apartheid question. There are different ways to respond to the apartheid one, but I found one recently that I thought was pretty fabulous. Would it have been conceivable under the apartheid regime in South Africa for a black person to be a judge? South Africans in the room? Was it possible? There were African judges? Okay, with authority over white people? Did they have jurisdiction over white people? Of course not. I mean, that would be the negation of the whole philosophy of apartheid. Can you imagine a black judge in apartheid South Africa presiding a 3-judge panel to indict the president of the country for sexual abuse, for rape, excuse me. Inconceivable. Well, what did just happen in Israel? An Israeli Arab judge presided a 3-judge commission to indict ex-President Katzab for rape. Where's apartheid in there? So that's really just one example, but there's like half a dozen examples like this that you can use, and usually, you know, that's pretty efficient to shut them off. Another thing that you need also to remember when they talk about apartheid is you always turn around the question. Ask them, what is apartheid? I mean, define for me what is apartheid. I hear this word all the time, I don't understand. So right there you will find that you put them on the defensive because quite often they're incapable of explaining to you what really apartheid was, because it doesn't exist anymore. Let me give you another example. And that is the accusation of genocide. I use this one all the time, especially with students on campus, and I have a heck of a lot of fun with it. They come to me and they say, Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians. And I go, oh my God, really? That's horrible. But can you tell me exactly what is genocide? And they tell me, well, you killed everybody. And I said, you know what? You're right. That's the definition of genocide. The 1948 Convention Against the Crime of Genocide defines what genocide is. And in so many other words, that is what it is. You kill everybody, physically eliminate all the members of a specific group. So we are in agreement. But let me ask you another question. How many Palestinians were there in 1948? And most of the time, they won't be able to tell you. So you held them. Okay, 150,000 in what became Israel. They stayed there. 600,000 fled, and 50,000 roughly were actually kicked out because they were in strategic places. So we're talking 800,000 Palestinians. Agreed? Yeah, whatever. Okay, third question. How many Palestinians do we have today?
1.5 million.
1.5 million in Israel, 1.2, 1.5, 3.54 million between the West Bank and Gaza and the Palestinian diaspora. So let's go back to the definition. If we agree that you kill everybody, how do you explain that the numbers went from 800,000 to shot to past 4 million? Don't you have a problem with that? Oh, well, yeah, okay, fine. I shouldn't have used the word genocide, but I meant massacre. I said, use massacre if you want, but do not ever use the word genocide again, because it's an absolute slander, and it's not a reflection of reality. You make them look stupid, and it works.
Just a very quick response on the assumption point, because it's a very perceptive point. It is an assumption that the Palestinians want a state. It's an assumption that they want a second state. It's an assumption that if they got one, it would live in peace and security side by side with Israel. It is clear that it would be an apartheid state because they want every Jew removed from it. And it is further an assumption that this should remain a central part of American foreign policy,